Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Talking Point. My name is Fahraaz Patel. We'd like to say Jazakallah to you for staying with us here on Hilaal TV channel 347. Now, South Africa at this very moment faces economic challenges. Many of them, of course, a projection from the IMF that the economy will only grow by 0.3%. We then have many macroeconomic challenges that face us as a country, but also at the same time we have bills, one of them being the NHI, and whether it can work for South Africa with many of the medical aid companies still holding a monopoly within private healthcare. To discuss all of this, I'd like to welcome Business Unity South Africa CEO, CAS COOVADIA. Mr. COOVADIA, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah so much for joining us here on Talking Point on Hilaal TV.
Walaikum salam, and thanks for having me, and hello to your viewers.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Mr. COOVADIA, let's start off, of course, with the initiative, which is Business for South Africa. The discussions, of course, with President Ramaphosa. How important were those discussions? Because everything economically really matters in this country. And maybe talk to us about what has to be done in order to get South Africa from an economic strength point.
So I think the discussions are very important. So Business for South Africa is a structure of Business Unity South Africa, or BUSA. And we use the platform when BUSA decides that we should be partnering with government to enable government to do what they should be doing in the national interest. And we started this in April this year, where we put to the president that we believe that energy, logistics and transport, and crime and corruption are the three most critical issues to get right if we are to attract investment and grow our economy. And we put to the president that these are the three things we are prepared to partner government on in a structured way. And if government is prepared to work with us in a structured way on this, then we will capacitate this initiative. We will agree on some very focused interventions over a period of time up to the end of next year. And if we are successful in that, business and government together, then we believe that we will get to 3% GDP growth and create 300,000 jobs. That's still treading water. It's not doing anything for unemployment. But at least we stop the slide and we can begin to turn the ship around. And so it's not the panacea to all our problems. There are a whole range of issues like education, like health, like some of the structural reform issues that need to be dealt with, that through business organization we still interact with government on. But this is a very particular initiative in three very particular areas with particular outcomes, and that's what we want to concentrate on. And we don't want to do more than that, because then we lose focus. And you know, we met with the president in April. We presented this to him. He agreed. We worked with his office on a structure. We presented jointly to him a structure in June. That was accepted. Since then, we've been working. We've agreed that we will report back to him every 6 to 8 weeks. We had another meeting on the 1st of August and one about 2 weeks ago. And we're making slow but sure progress in energy. In logistics, we're beginning to make progress. On crime and corruption, it's been a bit slower because of the nature of that, but we've now just put together a structure to work together on that as well.
And I am going to touch a bit on the NHI and, of course, the energy crisis that we're having, because I want to specifically focus on that in the next few segments. Mr. COOVADIA, the macroeconomic policies of the country, I mean, it's to put it to you this way, it's very mixed reactions. There are some who say that South Africa's macroeconomic policies are heading in the right direction. There are others who feel it completely chases away investors. How do you strike that balance of making sure that whatever South Africa's macroeconomic policies are, it's in the interest of the citizens and investing or attracting that investment within South Africa, but also making sure that those very same investors can look at South Africa and say, this is a country that is investor friendly?
Well, look, to a large extent, a lot of our policies are okay. It's the way we implement those policies and the fact that we don't have a united cabinet behind the president. So we have too many mixed messages on a range of issues. And when investors listen to mixed messages, they don't have the confidence to invest. And so let's take an example. Until recently, there were mixed messages between the Minister of Energy and Resources and the Minister of Public Enterprises on issues related to Eskom and so on issues related to movement from fossil fuel-based energy to cleaner forms of energy. Then another example, our National Treasury says that we need to really clamp down on expenditure, we need to reprioritize, we need to reduce expenditure because we just don't have the money. But other government departments then come out and say, well, they are not going to do that. In fact, they need money for more projects and so on. And those sorts of mixed messages bring about a lack of certainty, and investors need certainty to actually invest. And so I think that what we need to do is we need to ensure that we have a vision for this country under the leadership of President Ramaphosa, and we actually try to get to that vision with a single voice. And we have tremendous opportunities in this country. But we've got to get onto the same page to say that we are a very small economy on the southern side of the globe, and investors have plenty choices. Nobody owes us any favors. And so if you go just to the north of us, to Kenya, to Rwanda, to Nigeria, governments there are saying, we want you to come and invest in our country. We will create an environment for you to invest. And there's no buts behind that sentence. And so a lot of investment is going to those countries, whereas we're not getting sufficient investment in this country. And so what we've got to do is we've got to have a single message with a single vision. The president has got to bring his cabinet together behind his vision, and he's got to drive that sort of single message. The initiative we're involved in now, we've all agreed. The president is agreed. When we meet with him, we have 9 or 10 ministers. We have the CEOs or acting CEOs of the relevant state-owned enterprises. We have the chairs of the boards of those. We have the National Public Prosecutor and her deputy there. We have generals from the Defense Force. We have people from the security establishment and others, all at that meeting. And everybody there, under the direction of the president, has agreed that these are the 3 things we need to concentrate on, and we're going to work together on that. And that in itself creates confidence, creates some certainty, and the slow progress we are making gives investors certainty that we're actually beginning to address some of the crises. But we've got to keep that momentum going. And as I said, we've got to move away from the ideological debates. We've got to actually come together as one country behind the president and say it is all about investment and growth, and anything that militates against that, we should not be doing.
After the break, I continue my conversation with Business Unity South Africa CEO CAS COOVADIA. We're going to be talking about how much the influence of global politics and global economics has on South Africa, and whether South Africa can actually have independence from it, or is it all tied up? Do stay tuned. Welcome back to Talking Point. I'm in conversation with CAS COOVADIA from Business Unity South Africa. Mr. COOVADIA, Jazakallah again for staying with us. The challenge of business within the current domestic and global economic environment. Now, South Africa can do all it can from a domestic point of view to try and keep the economy going. But when, for example, you saw last year the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war, it changed so much. How does that now really hurt South Africa in terms of global economics and just the way South Africa can go ahead and really not just tie itself to that, but also make sure that they can do things the right way, the best way for its citizens?
Yeah, so global issues and global dynamics obviously impact on us. The Russia-Ukraine war, because of the disruption to supply chains that it actually created, had a significant impact on us, and it had on many countries around the world. And other global dynamics have an influence on us. We can control those to a certain extent, or we can manage those to a certain extent, in that if there's a disruption in supply chain, or example of wheat, then we've got to do what we can to actually increase our own production of wheat, or we can import from elsewhere. But it does have a negative impact on us. The issue here is that how do we actually respond to these sorts of things as what we say we are a non-aligned country. And being a non-aligned country, we've got to respond in a way that says that, and as our country has said, we believe in peace. We call on both parties in the Russian-Ukraine war to try to stop the war. African presidents had tried to bring about some peace and broker some peace, hasn't been very successful. But we cannot put ourselves in one camp or the other, because given where our economy is, given politically our non-alignment, given that we need to attract investment from wherever we can get that investment, so long as it's ethical and it's sustainable and it works for our country, we need to ensure that we maintain good trading and investment relationships with countries to the north and countries to the south. And that is the issue. The issue is how do we manage and address these global dynamics in a way that causes minimum disruption to our country. There's some of it which we have no control over, but there's a lot of it which we do have control over, and we must ensure that we control those in a way that we do remain non-aligned, that we keep our relationships with all potential investment destinations as good relationships, so that we are able to actually talk to different jurisdictions in the world to try and attract that investment. And that's what we should be doing.
Mr. COOVADIA, BRICS, I remember meeting you there for the first time, obviously, and we had a little chat, and a lot of it is, look, with these nations that are coming into BRICS, starting, of course, at the beginning of next year, one of them being the powerful Saudi Arabia, and of course we know them in terms of oil output. How much does South Africa need to obviously play a very tactical game economically to make sure that they can benefit from the strength of these incoming BRICS nations along with those who are currently there?
Yeah, so I mean, the formation of BRICS and now BRICS Plus, I guess, from the point of view of having a southern bloc in a multipolar world, I have no problem with that. South Africa is a very small economy in the BRICS conurbation. It's probably the smallest economy. Well, now with Ethiopia there, it's not the smallest one, but it's probably second smallest to Ethiopia. And so we need to see how best we can leverage our BRICS. But we increase our chances of leveraging of BRICS by doing what we need to do internally. So if internally we are positioning ourselves for growth and investment, if internally we are creating the environment for growth and investment, then we can benefit from the BRICS conurbation by attracting investment from the countries that have joined BRICS as well as the countries that were in BRICS before the enlargement of BRICS. I think that we need to try and look at where our competitive edges are as compared to the other BRICS countries, and we need to capitalize on those competitive advantages, and we need to promote those so that we export as much as we import from the BRICS countries. Currently, if you look at our trade relations with China, if you look at our trade relations with Russia, these are all in their favor. We need to ensure that we balance those trade relationships. We need to ensure that we create the environment in our country so that we get maximum investment from the BRICS countries and the enlarged BRICS countries. And we need to ensure that we improve our manufacturing capacity, our value-add capacity to resources, by becoming more competitive, by becoming more productive, so that we can utilize the strengths we have and ensure that our exports to the BRICS countries also increase, and we don't just depend on them for imports. And I think that's the sort of relationship we need to develop. I think that if the BRICS countries concentrate on increasing intra-BRICS trade and intra-BRICS investment, I think they can be a significant power block and play a terrific role in a unipolar world. But from a South African point of view, while strengthening our relationships with the BRICS countries, playing a role there to the extent we can and understanding what role we can play, we also need to, as I said earlier, continue to maintain good relationships with our traditional trading and investment partners.
Mr. Coovadia, before we go to the break, the AGOA summit, which is going to be hosted here in South Africa, and I'm sure that you will be in attendance for it. There seems to be many of the U.S. economic think tanks who say that the Lady R report is something that they could accept. How important is South Africa needing to be part of AGOA? Because when you look at how much of investment comes from the United States and trade that comes from the United States, it is quite a substantial amount.
No, I think for us to remain in AGOA is critical. A number of sectors in South Africa, particularly the agricultural sector, but other sectors as well, benefit from AGOA from a duty point of view, as do other African countries. US still remains one of our biggest trading partners. And so to get the benefits of AGOA is critical for us. And so in these AGOA negotiations and the AGOA meetings that will be held in between the 1st and 3rd of November, we need to ensure that we convince the United States and our interlocutors from the United States that we should remain in AGOA. It's undoubtedly to South Africa's benefit, but we believe it's also to the benefit of the United States to have one of the most diversified economy on the continent in AGOA. And that's certainly what we will be saying. I think the Lady R issue has, to a great extent, blown over. I co-hosted with the American Chamber of Commerce on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly a few weeks ago in New York, a roundtable for President Ramaphosa with about 20 to 25 leading American business people. And nobody talked about Lady R. They talked about some of the issues we have in the country. They talked about the opportunities in this country, but nobody talked about Lady R. So I think that issue has, to a great extent, blown over, but we need to learn lessons from that, and we need to ensure that that shadow is not cast in the AGOA discussions, and we need to be absolutely clear that we are together as a country in a position that says that we need to remain in AGOA for the next 10 years or so if we can, and we need to leverage off that to enable our economy to grow.
After the break, I continue my conversation with CAS COOVADIA. We'll be focusing on NHI, where they can work within South Africa. And of course, the UIF, just last week, a business unit had called for the UIF to be put under administration. We're just going to understand that from their point of view. So do stay tuned to Talking Point. Back to Talking Point. I'm in conversation with CAS COOVADIA from Business Unity South Africa. Mr. COOVADIA, I want to talk about something as recent as last week with the UIF. Now, I think we all understand the importance of the unemployment insurance fund, especially with so many people being unemployed in this country right now. To just maybe clarify with regards to the calls for it to be put under administration, how serious is the situation within the UIF? If you could maybe expand on that, please.
It's extremely serious. I mean, the UIF is not efficient in distributing the funds it needs to distribute. The investments it has been making of excess funds are inappropriate, and they're under suspicion. The minister has expressed serious concern and has questioned the practices of both the UIF commissioner and the director general in the Department of Labor. In this recent deal with a company whose CEO is also the chair of Productivity South Africa, and the haste with which the UIF fund actually wanted to pay this company for services they had yet to render, all raised suspicion about the way the commissioner as well as the UIF office is conducting itself. Within the context of where we've come from in the last 10 to 15 years, corruption in the country, these sorts of practices raise serious questions. And as you say, particularly in an institution that's been formed and that gets its money, raises money from employers. It's not its own money, it's employers' money that should be distributed fairly, equitably, and quickly when applications are made to people who have lost their jobs, to unemployed people, until they can get back into the employment sector. So we haven't gone public just like that. We've been trying for the last 3 years to talk to the UIF, to engage the Department of Labor to try and address these issues. And we just haven't succeeded. There's been no significant interest to address them. We haven't been successful in meeting the Department of Labor despite numerous attempts to try to do so. And we reached the stage last week or 2 weeks ago, actually. We spent a week just considering this matter. And we agreed that the public needs to know about this, that a public statement to the effect that we are asking for the UIF to be put under administration will, one, put pressure on government, and two, also alert the public to what is happening with essentially monies that the UIF holds in trust from employers to actually transfer to employees under certain circumstances. Labor has supported us in this call. They also came out with a statement along similar lines, and we now hope to interact with and engage with the Minister of Employment and Labor and his department to see how we move forward quickly to try and address the situation.
Mr. Coovadia, let's touch on the NHI. I know BUSA's sister organization, Business Leadership South Africa, and its CEO, Busisiwe Mavuso, once said on a radio station that it just cannot work given our fiscal challenges within the country, and also the fact that from the public hospital perspective, it has gone as down as it can get. Now, I know that Business for South Africa has worked along with Discovery Health, who is the leading private medical insurance company in South Africa, in really stating that this cannot work. Now, I think both you and I can agree that every single South African needs equal health care. But in the economy that we are in right now, is that really potentially a chance for that to happen?
So firstly, just let me clarify one thing. Business for South Africa is not working with Discovery. We don't work with any corporate on issues of national interest. What we are doing is we put together a team, a specialist team, which includes somebody from Discovery. But
thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Coovadia.
Stavros Nicola from Aspen and others, and doctors also on this team and so on. And we've got lawyers and others to develop an approach towards the NHI in the National Council of Provinces, because the NHI is now going to be considered and it's before the National Council of Provinces. Our position is very clear. We need to try and achieve universal health care. We can't do it without improving the public healthcare sector. We can't do it without including and utilizing the services and resources of the private healthcare sector. We don't have in the fiscus the sorts of money that will be needed for the NHI if the NHI is to be run and managed by the state. The NHI bill talks about a single fund into which money will go. We don't believe that's the route to go. We believe that we need to have clear collaboration and a partnership between the public and private sector to achieve universal health care over a period of time. And we support the NHI bill, but we believe the bill in its current form is not appropriate. It needs some changes to Section 33, for instance, which currently reads as if it will crowd out the private sector. We believe this should be a true partnership. We believe that the private sector has a role to play and has capacity and resources to bring to bear. We want to work in partnership with the public sector to improve the public healthcare sector, and then to together ensure that there's universal healthcare over a period of time in a way that retains the skills we've got in the country, because as the NHI is currently structured, it will lead, and if it's implemented in its current form, it will lead to an exodus of doctors out of our country. We cannot afford that. It's patently clear that we don't have the money to implement the NHI as the bill says it should be implemented. So we in discussions with the Minister of Health. The President is aware of our position. We made a submission to the National Council of Provinces, and we attending a number of the provincial sessions of hearings and town halls that the National Council of Provinces have pulled together with a view to changing aspects of the bill to enable a true partnership between the public and private sector to, over a period of time, achieve universal health care.
After the break, I wrap up my conversation with CAS COOVADIA. We're going to be talking about the two SOEs that are putting South Africa or setting South Africa back. That is Transnet and, of course, Eskom. Do stay tuned to Talking Point. Welcome back to Talking Point. This is the final segment with CAS COOVADIA from Business Unity South Africa. Mr. COOVADIA, of course, the IMF had said South Africa's GDP can grow by 3% if, of course, two of our SOEs find its way back to normal. The one is Transnet, the one is Eskom. I want to start off with Transnet because we saw within a matter of 2 weeks, some of its senior leadership had departed from the position. One of them, of course, being the CEO, Portia Derby. Now, if Transnet's not working, our rail system at this very moment stands still or is disrupted by many other afflictions. How important is Transnet for us right now? Because really, our rail network needs to be working effectively 24 hours a day.
Well, in many ways, Transnet is just as important, if not more important than Eskom. Energy and load shedding and so on obviously affects ordinary citizens very badly. But Transnet and the fact that ports aren't working properly, the rail system isn't working properly, the road system is collapsing in many instances, has a significant impact on business, on the cost of doing business, and on our efficiency. An institution like TRASA not being effective has a significant impact on the ability of ordinary people to travel from places of residence to places of work. So it is a critically important organization that we need to get right. That's why we identified logistics and transport as one of the 3 priority areas we are working in partnership with government on. Now, the team we put together on logistics and transport, and we formed a structure similar to the National Energy Crisis Committee in the presidency. We formed a structure called the National Logistics Crisis Committee in the presidency, and both business and government are working on those. And we've had very good interaction with the Minister of Public Enterprises on the particular initiative. We've had very good interaction with the new Transnet board, both of whom recognize the need for business to become significantly more involved in, 1, trying to sort Transnet out, and 2, in actually getting involved in helping Transnet manage and make efficient and fix up our logistics architecture and infrastructure. I think it is extremely unfortunate that under the leadership of the CEO, we have not been able to interact as much as we would have liked to, and as much as we need to, with the Transnet executive. After the departure of the CEO, we're beginning to see an improvement in our interaction with the executive, and we believe we will make progress with them. So it's a mammoth task, but we believe that we've now developed the relationships. We beginning to work with them, and we will be able to make some progress in trying to address some of the more critical issues in Transnet. We're not going to see changes overnight. As I said, it's a massive task, but I think that the conditions have now been created for us to actually work together, for the private sector to bring its resources and capacity to bear in the national interest, but also so that businesses can do business far more effectively, efficiently. It would improve our competitiveness. Our ports, which were the best in Africa and have slipped significantly, can again and have all the potential of being the best in Africa and amongst the most effective in the world. And so we need to keep on pushing there. I think the changes in the executive will give some impetus to this, and we hope to make progress on it.
Mr. COOVADIA, let's talk Eskom, the SOE that the gift that keeps on giving, but probably in a more negative way. Makwana, the chairperson, of course, he's departed the organization. We've seen some of the Kusile units coming back, which of course is fantastic news, which means the lowering of load shedding. But is that enough right now to take us away from the energy crisis, even if it is on a phase-by-phase status?
Yeah, so it's not enough. I think on energy, we've made good progress. As you say, could see that some of the units are coming back and so on. For the first time, through this initiative with the President and with the Minister of Electricity, we've managed to put engineers and other expertise in from the private sector into 4 of the power stations to increase the energy factor in the power stations, to take care of some of the problems there. And hence we're seeing some sort of beginning to stabilize load shedding to an extent. We're not going to get rid of load shedding for another 2 years or so until renewables get onto the grid and we are able to actually diversify our energy mix. But we're making good progress. I think that the decision finally by the Minister of Public Enterprises to establish the transmission company, the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, giving the transmission company the necessary licenses to do to fulfill its responsibility is a step in the right direction. I think we must be absolutely clear that one of the critical issues we need to undertake is to implement the President's energy plan. And we have raised resources to secure expertise to donate to the National Energy Crisis Committee. And as of about 3 months ago, we put those experts into the National Energy Crisis Committee to help implement the President's plan, because the implementation of the President's plan over the next year and a half to 2 years will open up significant space for the private sector in energy generation and in transmission. We working together with government on issues related to the grid, so that we strengthen our grid and increase our grid capacity to take on renewables, and over the next 2 years or so ensure that we don't land up with a problem of supply of energy but not have the capability of having grid capacity for it. So we're working very well together on these issues. And I think that the role that the private sector is playing. So when the President increased the ceiling for embedded energy from 10 megawatts to 100 megawatts, we immediately saw investment by the private sector in energy generation. And at the moment, we have close on to 150 projects worth about 4 billion rand that are on the go. But that energy will only get onto the grid in about 2 years' time, because that decision to increase the ceiling was taken only in September last year. We had been calling for that for about 2 to 3 years. Had that decision been taken then, we would have had a very different scenario in the energy sector. So I think that here we are making good progress. And we're working very well with Eskom. We working jointly on a number of the work streams in NECOM with government. And I think that we all focus on ensuring that the President's energy plan, which we agree with, is implemented as quickly as possible, because that then enables us to diversify our energy mix, ensure an appropriate role for Eskom, not the monopoly it is today, but an appropriate role for Eskom. And there's absolutely no doubt that renewables, the cost of renewables has gone down significantly over the last few years. And if we work well together, we can ensure that affordable energy is made available to our people.
Mr. Coovadia, I want to touch on renewables because we are heading into a phase of green energy. But then there's, of course, the coal community within Mpumalanga who rely on that as its their bread and butter. So how do we strike the balance of not alienating them, but also making sure that South Africa moves with the times for green energy?
Yeah, so we've got to do this along a good, workable, sustainable, just transition pathway. We can't move from fossil fuel-based energy to clean energy in one fell swoop. We've got to structure it, and we've got to move in phases so that we manage any risks to employment, so that we have the time and the ability to reskill people, so that we are able to phase ourselves out. And gas will be a factor in this. Part of a transition energy source has got to be gas, has got to be hydrogen. Through an organization called National Business Initiative, which is sort of business sustainability arm, which I also chair, we've done tremendous work on a just energy transition pathway together with Boston Consulting. And in that work, we looking at a number of things. One, how do we limit the impact on employment as we move from fossil fuel-based energy to coal and to cleaner energy? But we have also looked at where the opportunities for job creation lie as we transition in that way. And we've got to look at both the opportunities for job creation, how we transit to ensure that we limit greater unemployment, how we transit so that we don't impact negatively on economic growth, but how the transition to cleaner fuel actually enables economic growth. And all of those need to be taken into account. And I think we're working quite closely with government on all of that now. And we need to continue to work closely together to ensure that we achieve this in a just way.
One final question, Mr. Coovadia, to wrap up this conversation. So South Africa has all of these challenges. The crime rate is high. Of course, we've got the energy crisis, which, as you say, there is movement towards it being resolved. Our SOEs are just not functioning at the best way we would like to function. And general citizens' confidence is low. Now, I've heard many say that South Africa is in a failed state. But there are some that are saying that, look, at this very moment, there's still certain, institutions that are keeping it from not being a failed state. When you look at South Africa now, with all the challenges that are here, Mr. Coovadia, is South Africa in a failed state? And if it's not in a failed state, what is keeping it still running as a country that could be heading in the direction we'd like it to see?
Well, I don't think it's a failed state yet. I think that we have significant crises. And one of the things we always urge government is let's recognize and let's admit that we are in crisis. Because if we don't do that, we can't address it. And believe you me, investors and others, potential investors and current investors, do their homework. They know what the issues are. They know what the crises are. The more we actually recognize the crisis, but at the same time also begin to work together to deal with the crisis, that begins to change the narrative, that begins to create confidence amongst investors and bring about some sort of consistency. Why? I think, the fact that, we have businesses and corporates that are global businesses in many of our sectors. Global businesses that could actually relocate and operate in many parts of the world. They haven't done that. They are still here. The initiative we involved in was government. We've had over 130 CEOs pledging their support for the initiative. We have about 25 or 30 CEOs that is our reference group that's intricately involved in this. We have CEOs heading up each of the three work streams, championing each of the three work streams that we're working with government. And that's the strength of South Africa. You have a business community that I believe is patriotic, that's saying we still believe in the opportunities in this country, and we've got to give it one more shot to make this work. If government had not, under the President, committed to the extent that they are committing currently to the three initiatives, then we might have had to take a step back and say, okay, what do we do? And then we might be rolling along towards this failed state. But I think that this initiative, as I said in the beginning, is to stop the slide. And if we stop the slide, we have the opportunity to turn the ship around and move away from this threat of a failed state. But we closed it. Let's make no mistake about it. Crime is rampant. Organized crime is rampant. We're not delivering services effectively. Our infrastructure is eroding. We have major municipalities that are not being managed well. All of these are failure, signs of failure. But the fact that certainly the private sector and government are beginning to work in partnership to address some of the critical issues, and we believe our partners in labor should also be party to this in different ways. If we can pull our heads together and say, we are in this together, we have plenty of opportunities, but one thing for sure, from a business point of view, we are absolutely clear that we can't waste time on ideological debates. We've got to concentrate on creating the environment for investment, and on the back of that investment, we build an inclusive growth that is sustainable over a number of years. And that's the only way we're going to stop ourselves from being a failed state and addressing the crises we have.
Mr. Coovadia, unfortunately, time has run up. We'd like to say Jazakallah to you for making the time with us here on a Talking Point on Hilaal TV.
Jazakallah. Thanks for having me.
Ameen.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you.
That is CAS COOVADIA Business Unity South Africa CEO. That's all we have for you here on Talking Point. I'll be back same time, place next week here on Hilaal TV. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.